Hello, children, and welcome to my English class. Today, we are going to do the second chapter of your Flamingo textbook, The Lost Spring Stories from Stolen Childhood by Anis Jung. Anis Jung is an Indian writer, a journalist, and a columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad. She was born in Rourkela, Orissa. She hails from an aristocratic family in Hyderabad. Her father, Nawab Hoshiar Jung, was a renowned scholar and poet and served as the Musahib to the last Nizam of Hyderabad. Her mother and her brother are also Urdu poets. After schooling and college at Osmania University in Hyderabad, she went to the United States for higher studies at the University of Michigan. The works of Anis Jung are very close to life. Some of her important and well known works are Unveiling India. It is a travel diary focusing on her interviews with various women. Night of the New Moon. It is about her encounters with the Muslim women in India. Seven Sisters. These stories are based on the social and economic conditions of women in the seven countries of South Asia. Breaking the Silence is based on her conversations on women's lives from around the world. Beyond the Courtyard. This is based on her interviews with the daughters of the women she had talked to first in Unveiling India. The background of this prose piece. This piece of prose is actually an excerpt from Anis Jung's book entitled The Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. In this lesson, Anis Jung analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which compel children to a perpetual life of exploitation. The author unveils the utter destitution of the rag pickers of Simapuri, Delhi. In the story, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. And the bangle sellers of Firozabad. Through the story, I want to drive a car. The Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood has a tinge of irony. Spring, being the best season of a year, is full of color, fragrance, freshness, renewal, and growth. Similarly, childhood is like spring, as it marks the beginning of human life, full of joy, pleasure, play, and growth. The writer expresses her concern over the exploitation of children in hazardous jobs like rag picking and bangle making. Abject poverty and thoughtless traditions result in the loss of childhood of millions of children. They work hard to support themselves and their families rather than enjoying their childhood by playing and seeking education. We need to provide these poverty stricken children an opportunity to dare to dream and lead a life of dignity. Now, before we go into the details of the lesson, let us know the story in a nutshell. The main characters in this lesson are Saheb-e-Alam, a rag picker, Mukesh, a bangle maker, and Savita, who is also a young bangle maker. The story is set in the slums of Simapuri in Delhi and Firozabad. The story is about the trials and tribulations of the people living there. The paradoxes of the society we live in are well portrayed in this lesson. Spring symbolizes happiness, but the children of these slums hardly have any joy and happiness in their lives. The dark and dreary lives of these children, entrapped in traditions and grinding poverty, is the main theme of the story. This lesson is divided into two parts. Part A is Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. In the story, the writer encounters Sahib, who is a rag picker whose parents have left behind the life of poverty in Dhaka, Bangladesh, to earn a living in Delhi. His family, like many other families of rag pickers, lives in Simapuri. They do not have any identification other than a ration card. They live in slums without even the basic amenities such as water and sanitation. The children do not go to school and they are excited at the prospect of finding a coin or even a 10 rupee note while rummaging in the garbage. It is the only way of earning a living. They live in impoverished conditions but resign to their fate. Garbage is a means of survival for the elders, but for the children it is a magical wonder. For them, garbage is gold. The writer is pained to see Saheb-e-Alam, a rag picker whose name means the ruler of the universe. He is losing the spark of childhood and roaming barefoot with his friends. For a better earning, Sahib works in a tea stall and is paid rupees 800 per month. But he sadly realizes that he is no longer a free bird and master of his own will as he was as a rag picker. He is more of a bonded laborer with surrendered freedom and identity. And this loss of freedom and identity weighs heavily on his tender shoulders. The second part of this lesson is the story I Want to Drive a Car. In this story, Mukesh, a young boy, wants to be his own master. He lives in Firozabad and is employed in the glass industry of bangle making. His family, like the others, are also victims of extreme poverty. He lives in a stinking surrounding with choked lanes and garbage piles all around in a half built shack with thatched dead grass roof with iron doors. Hailing from Firozabad, the center of India's bangle making and glass blowing industry, he has always worked in the glass making industry. His grandmother considers bangle making to be a God given lineage. They are unaware that it is illegal for children to work in such close proximity to high temperatures in the furnaces. They are exposed to various health hazards, like even losing their eyesight as they work in abysmal conditions in dark and dingy cells. They are ill treated, ill fed, and caught in the vicious circle of the middlemen, the sahukars, the policemen, and the politicians. Their belief in the family traditions and the vicious circle condemns them to this perpetual trap. So burdened are the bangle makers of Firozabad that they have lost their ability to even dream, unlike Mukesh, who dreams of driving a car and becoming a motor mechanic. Mukesh dreams big, but sadly lacks the resources such as money and education which put a check on his dreams. Children, this was just a story in a nutshell, but when you go through the text, I'm sure you will find some lines which will set you thinking. So, here are a few lines to ponder. Story 1. Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. A garbage has a different meaning. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it is a means of survival. Now, in this line, garbage is gold to the rag pickers. For the elders, it is gold because it is a source of their daily bread and a roof over their head, even if it is a leaky one. For the children, it is gold because it is a magical wonder, as they may get a rare 10 rupee note in the garbage. The next line, his name Saheb-e-Alam, Lord of the Universe. Sahib's name is full of irony. The meaning of his name is Lord of the Universe, but he is poverty stricken, barefooted, and homeless. He is a rag picker who gets up early in the morning, rushes barefoot to garbage bins, and scrounges the garbage dumps of Delhi to have his bread. The third line, the steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulders. Sahib is no longer his own master. The life of Sahib as a rag picker was very poor, but his life as a child laborer becomes even worse. An army of barefoot boys who appear like morning birds and disappear at noon. Due to poverty, these boys cannot afford slippers or shoes, but are free spirited and enjoy and revel in their freedom like birds. These boys call it a tradition to walk barefoot, but in reality, they cannot afford slippers or shoes. Their condition is poorer than the priest boy who could get his shoes in life after a few decades. But the rag pickers suffer from deprivation since generations, and there is still no hope of change for them. The second story, I Want to Drive a Car, also has some thought provoking lines. The first one, his dream looms like a mirage amidst the dust of streets that fills his town Firozabad, famous for its bangles. The dream of Mukesh to become a motor mechanic is like a mirage which appears possible but in reality is far from possible. It is because he is a worker in the bangle making factory and has very less chances to change his present occupation, which he has got in heredity. The other line, few aeroplanes fly over Firozabad. The condition of workers in Firozabad is so poor that they couldn't even think of high things, even in their dreams. Becoming a motor mechanic itself is a great challenge for Mukesh. He could never, even in his wildest dreams, think of becoming a pilot. Well, children, by now you must have understood that the theme of the story is the grinding poverty and the traditions which condemn poor children to a life of exploitation. The two stories taken together depict the plight of children forced into labor early in life and denied the opportunity of schooling. But is it just a story to be read and forgotten? Don't you think we need to reflect on this? So let's reflect. None of them know that it is illegal for children like him to work in the glass furnaces with high temperatures in dingy cells without air and light. These words from the lesson throw light on the grinding poverty that forces many children in India to lead a life of exploitation, living in subhuman conditions. Driven by a concern for such children who lose their childhood, write an article in 120 to 150 words on child labor in India. I am sure, children, you would write this article after going through the lesson. Let us do our little bit for these children who have lost the spring of their lives. Don't let their life end before it even begins. Let us strive towards stopping child labor. Thank you. This is Mrs. V. K. Jayashree, PGT English from BNR Excellence Academy, Kharagpur.